Okay, good evening and welcome. My name is Jennifer Barahona and welcome to tonight's town hall presentation. I am the proud CEO of Norwalk Acts. We represent the backbone structure of the larger system. And tonight's presentation with the candidates for the Norwalk Board of Education is hosted by the Center for Youth Leadership at Brian McMahon High School and presented to you by Norwalk Acts. The Center for Youth Leadership, which is a student activism organization, uses public awareness activities, volunteer programs, and social change campaigns to address racism and equity, dating violence, students' rights, sexual harassment, human trafficking, the rights of immigrants, and mental health. Norwalk Acts brings people and organizations together to work to improve outcomes for children and youth along the cradle to career continuum. Our collective impact work is rooted in the belief that no single organization alone can create large-scale social change on its own. One of the roles of Norwalk Acts is to serve as a neutral convener and to facilitate conversations that sometimes can be difficult and uncomfortable. Norwalk Acts does not endorse groups or individuals and believe growth and change happens when space is created for these critical conversations to occur. The format for tonight's presentation will be as follows. Each candidate will have a 30-second introduction followed by 4 rounds of questions. In the first 3 rounds, candidates will receive a unique question and have 2 minutes to respond. Candidates will be called in alphabetical order by last name. Our student moderators will explain the final round before closing statements. The questions were compiled by the Center for Youth Leadership from several sources, including CYL members, the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, policy groups in Louisiana and Maryland, and others. The questions were not shared with candidates in advance. A bell will sound with 30 seconds left in each candidate's allotted time, and a timer will be displayed. If necessary, we will remind the candidates to wrap up the answers, and we reserve the right to mute candidates who go over their time limit, and of course to mute any disruptors in the meeting and remove anyone participants. Everyone is currently on mute, and so we will unmute you at your time if you are a candidate. Let's start by meeting the candidates. So these are just a very brief 30-second introductions, starting with Kara Baekey. So I've selected unmute for you. There you go, Kara. Welcome.
Got it. Good evening. My name is Kara Nelson Baekey, and I would like to thank the students of Norwalk Acts for inviting me to participate in tonight's forum. I'm an almost 20-year resident of Norwalk with 2 children who have been or are students in the Norwalk Public Schools. Professionally, I've been an advertising executive for over 20 years. I'm also a gun violence prevention activist, having founded the Connecticut chapter of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America in the wake of the shooting at Sandy Hook in 2012. I served as its leader for almost 7 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheri McCready-Brown.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to Norwalk Acts and to the Center for Youth Leadership for inviting me here this evening. My name is Sheri McCready-Brown. As a lifelong resident, I attended schools here, and I am a graduate of Brian McMahon High School. My daughter attended schools here as well. Currently, I serve as a real estate agent for William Ravis, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Colin Hosten.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Colin Hosten. I'm the current chair of the Norwalk Board of Education. I teach rhetoric and writing up at Fairfield University. I'm also a freelance writer and editor and work in some nonprofit management. Born and raised in Trinidad and went to school in Atlanta before moving to Brooklyn and then settling here in Norwalk, where I've lived for almost 15 years with my husband and our wonderful dog.
Great. Thank you. And now to Shirley Mosby, please. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped Alex Kemeny. I apologize.
That's okay. Ready? Okay,
Yes.
I was born and raised in Norwalk, went through the Norwalk Public Schools. I've recently retired. I was the music teacher at Rowayton Elementary School for 31 years. And part of that time, I was also at Columbus and Ponis. In 1987, I started a theater in Norwalk called Crystal Theater. and I still continue to work at Crystal Theater. I have a daughter, Hannah, who is 26, and she graduated from Brian McMahon in 2013, went to South Carolina and works at Indeed in Stamford, Connecticut.
Thank you. Now to Shirley Mosby. Sorry about that. Whoops. Let me unmute you, Shirley, or it should have asked you for an unmute. There you go. Yep.
Okay, good. Hi, I'm Shirley Mosby, a lifelong Norwalk resident, former Board of Education member and community advocate working in the finance industry who attended Norwalk Public Schools, and my children attended Norwalk Public Schools. My son graduated from Norwalk High and Quinnipiac University, and my nephew is a Norwalk High graduate. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Janine Randolph. Janine, you should have gotten yeah, there you go. Great.
Hi there. I'm Janine Randolph, and again, I would like to thank Norwalk ACTS and the Center for Youth Leadership for inviting us to this forum tonight. I work for a healthcare company. I do travel coordination as well as billing for them across the country. I've lived in Norwalk for 11 years, and I have two girls, one who has just graduated high school at Norwalk High, and the other one who is at Nathan Hale. And I've been a PTA member throughout the whole time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Jody Sattler, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Jody Sattler, and I would like to introduce myself as a passionate and dedicated parent who is ready to take the next step for leadership in Norwalk. I've been on every PTA and school governance council at the schools my children have attended. I ran a before-school enrichment program at Rowayton Elementary School and an after-school program at Rowayton Middle School. I was also on the district-wide Academically Talented Redesign Committee and Guidance Redesign Committee. I currently have 3 children at Brian McMahon High School, and I am the co-chair of the Brian McMahon High School School Governance Council.
Thank you so much. And finally, Katherine Price Snedaker, please.
Hi, my name is Katherine Price Snedaker. I moved to South Norwalk from New York City in 1993 and have been here ever since. I have a master's in social work and have worked in a variety of places, including Family and Children's Agency. My 3 children went through kindergarten through K in Norwalk schools, kindergarten through 12th grade in Norwalk schools. Very proud of the education they received, and I'm excited to contribute as I can in the future of the kids today.
Terrific. Thank you all so much for those introductions. And now I am proud to turn it over tonight to our moderators for the evening.
Thanks, Jennifer, and thanks to our guests in the audience for joining us. My name is Daniela, and I'm joined by Roja and Vanessa, my fellow CYL members. Let's jump right into the questions with Roja starting us off.
Our first question is for Kara Nelson Baekey. Can you give us your assessment of the district's recently released 5-year strategic plan?
Yes, thank you for that question. So I have had the chance to review the 5-year strategic plan that recently showed up in my mailbox. And I'm happy to say that I was really glad to see the focus on the emotional and social learning opportunities and the funding that will be going towards those types of programs in our schools. In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, well, we're not really through it yet, but in light of the last almost 2 years of the COVID situation, I'm very concerned about our students' welfare when it comes to not just academic, slide backs and achievement gaps, but more importantly, I believe personally, social and emotional supports. I think that it's critical that we provide enough resources for all of our students so that they are feeling supported in this difficult time of trying to get back on track academically as well as socially. I have a son who's a sophomore in P-Tech, and last year he was a freshman, and it was a difficult time to be a fully remote student. And so especially when you're in high school, you're wanting to be able to socialize and be with your friends and really get integrated into a new community. So I was happy to see that there will be that focus on social and emotional learning for our students, as well as a focus on our diversity, equity, and inclusion aspects. I was able to participate in a program a couple weeks ago around diversity and literacy. And I think it's important that we all recognize that there are more things that we should be doing to ensure that the majority of our students who are indeed minorities are receiving equity in their educations here in Norwalk.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The next question is for Sheri McCready-Brown. Can you give us your assessment of the district's equity in schoolwork?
One of the strategic priorities that was identified in the priorities of the district is equity, and that's near and dear to my heart. I think it's very important to make sure that every child has an opportunity to do well, regardless of their circumstance or background. And I think it's particularly important that we pay attention to that as we continue to navigate during the pandemic, given that there may be some kids who are special needs who require some additional supports. I also think that it's important during this period that we continue to embrace social, emotional, and the psychological well-being of our students during this time. In my estimation, children do not learn well if they don't feel safe, if they don't feel supported. And of course, this also comes with educational funding. And I believe that we need to continue to work with our local, federal, and state partners to ensure that our schools, our administration, and our staff have the support that they need to make these things happen. The other thing that I think that's important to note is for the first time, the district has hired a senior level administrator, a deputy superintendent of excellence, equity, and inclusion, which is very unique to Norwalk.
Thank you so much.
All right, the next question is for Colin Hosten. How will you ensure transparency to families on key school benefits, such as course offerings, enrichment opportunities, and teacher experience levels, as well as the degree to which students of different races and income levels receive these benefits?
Thank you for that question, Daniela. It's actually extremely timely because that's one of the priorities that we identified for our new superintendent when Dr. Sheri was brought on in 2020. We found that, we know that in Norwalk, we have some of the best students. I put them toe to toe with anybody in the country. We have some excellent programs, and we also have disparity in how much families are cognizant of all those programs. And that has led to some families not being able to fully take part in all the opportunities that we offer. One of the things that we're doing is we're creating a family welcome center. There was some news about it in the paper this weekend, and there's been a lot of talk about it. One of the things I want to say is that in a very simple way, it's meant to do exactly what you just described. It's meant to be a one-stop place where families can come and learn about all the programs we have available. They can ask questions about individual structures at different schools. They can learn about teachers. There will also be a component where students can get their health checkups and needs all in one facility. It's a one-stop shop, and it's actually modeled after similar things that exist in other districts as well. I think it's long overdue, especially now as we are addressing some of the learning interruptions that you and your peers have had to deal with this past 18 months. One of the just in the last 30 seconds, I'll say is that one of the other priorities we've made is that we're making sure to more intentionally reach out to some of our families who don't speak English as their native language, right? So we're making sure that there are opportunities for them to be involved particularly in Spanish and Haitian Creole, so that we're creating a space where everybody feels welcome.
Thank you.
The next question is for Shirley Mosby. According to the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, school districts with high student achievement are characterized by excellent working relationships among the superintendent, the Board of Education, and school governance teams. To what degree does this describe Norwalk?
Shirley, sorry, you got to unmute again. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, I'm going to answer the question, but I think it was Alex before me, but that's okay. All right. Okay. Norwalk is considered a school where basically we're functioning very highly with our children, but there's needs there because we have such a diverse set of students in our school that each individual needs are different. And to have it on the same level as the state, that's fine. And we've been reaching those goals, but we have a lot more to go. There's where we need to have more inclusivity, where people can come in groups to give their ideals in general, to assess what's going on, and then together we can come and make ourselves better. Because during this pandemic, we had some learning loss, and that there, is a detriment to us. But on the other hand, we have some good programs, but then these programs need to be enhanced so that we could move further with kids that are students that were struggling in the beginning before, this pandemic. And we have, policies in place, but we could make it a little bit stronger with more community input and from the surrounding community. And we could, implement that in there just to move ahead. Okay.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Alexandria Kemeny. Oftentimes, when people talk about equity, they focus on students' academic success. However, in light of the recently released data about Norwalk students' mental health, what role do you think schools should play in eliminating barriers to equity for students' emotional success?
Well, equity to me in education means that students are provided with what they need to succeed. So, and I'm waiting for the question, will it come up so I can continue? The issue of the social emotional issues, I believe that a lot of these problems are created by the stress sometimes the school administrators put on teachers. They push students ahead through the curricula. Because they're pushed ahead before they really totally grasp the concepts. Many students feel anxiety and frustration when pushed through their studies before they fully grasp the concept. So teachers are told they must push on through the curricula, regardless of the students who fall behind. Then these students fall more behind, and then the problem snowballs. Children have no control over the adult-driven academic strides expected of them. So these expectations are continually set higher, creating more anxiety in the students' academic life. There's no more joy, there's no more fun in school anymore. So children are taking control in the only way they can, calling attention to their anxiety by hurting themselves or others. So I believe the root of the problem is a need for more balance of academics with the social and emotional wellness in the classroom.
This question is for Janine Randolph. In a recent report about the increase in hospitalizations among school-aged children experiencing mental health situations, medical professionals and others call for stronger partnerships between schools and mobile crisis teams. What roles do you believe community organizations should play in supporting students and families, and what should a partnership with the schools look like to make this happen?
Thank you again for the question. It is a very sad statement and occurrence that we've been through this past 2 years, and we're seeing this increase in hospitalizations. It speaks highly to me because I've had situations almost recently which something like this occurred. So I'm a little bit emotional about this question. Again, I would like to definitely see the medical professionals working with us in school as much as possible. I know that this is a difficult situation for us to get together. We're trying to withhold our budget and plan it out as much as possible. But as we've all been talking, this social and emotional problems that we have had with even just learning loss for children sets them off. Not being able to have been with friends, and even now still those are problems that are occurring with us. So I think that this is highly needed for us. I believe that the community organizations should try to support our families and our students as much as possible. I think we all are looking for that. And I think a partnership with the schools, as far as community organizations, I think we all need to get together and talk about what that looks like. I think we need to make sure that this happens. This is extremely important to me, and I think to my fellow Slate members as well. And I hope that we can go forward and get this going across and really bring down those numbers as far as these hospitalizations are concerned.
Thank you.
The next question is for Jody Sattler. As you know, in July 2021, the school district published a set of goals for the 2021 to 2022 school year. One of its roadmaps to success for families is to establish the Family Center as a central hub for parents and guardians. According to reports, the center will open in the coming months. Tell us the role you see the Family Center playing in the lives of immigrant students and their families or sponsors.
Thank you for the question. The Welcome Center should be a place that parents feel comfortable, because number one, I think sometimes they don't feel comfortable always walking into the schools. A lot of that's a result of the security measures that we've had to put into place over the past couple of years. You walk up to a school, you have to hit a buzzer. You can't just walk in and meet somebody face to face anymore. And a Welcome Center allows interaction face to face. And it allows them to ask questions to someone who hopefully speaks their language, or that can find someone to speak their language. It also hopefully will help them with any sort of resources or accommodations that their students may need. Addressing those before they get to the classroom, I think, is really important. A lot of the students come with different needs, and if any of you have been through this, you know it can take months to do assessments and find whatever kind of accommodations the students will need. It will help the classroom teachers know the expectations of what the student needs before they enter the classroom too. The final thing that I hope it helps with is just letting the families understand all the different opportunities that are available. In that guide that you mentioned again, I thought one of the best things that they mentioned was all the options and opportunities open to Norwalk students. This should be information that is more publicized. It's great PR for our school district. And I don't think all of our parents even realize all the opportunities that are offered at our high schools, the Early Childhood Center, P-Tech, Healthcare Academy. You can, as a new parent, you can look and see a guide, not just for your first couple years, but the years leading up through high school and what your student can achieve as they stay with Norwalk Public Schools.
Thank you.
The final question in this round is for Katherine Snedaker. In August, the school district submitted a plan to the State Department of Education outlining how it will spend the millions of dollars in COVID relief money it received from the federal government. Can you give us your assessment of the plan?
Hi, I'm unmuted now. Hi, thank you for the question. I don't honestly know the specifics of, line items. I do know that the COVID relief money, I think it's 43 million, was going to address learning loss and COVID disruption. I hope that it will be going to whatever resources that the schools and the school administrators have put value to, that and also to help with the learning loss, and especially our most vulnerable children and those gaps, and also a piece of that for the social-emotional learning. As a social worker, I was actually a school social worker a bajillion years ago. About 30 years ago, I was a school social worker in Cranberry, and at the time, Cranberry's 5th grade was having a number of kids were struggling, and I was able to go in and spend a year, 1 day a week, with those students and just sitting and listening to them and really spending time with them. And I learned a lot about them, and it, I hope, changed their view towards social workers and reaching out for counseling and care when they needed it. And that was, you know, pre-COVID, and with the situation of all the, you know, it's our first pandemic, and hopefully our last, and the needs for social workers and the needs for crisis counselors and the mental health aspects that should be equitably distributed to all those that need them, so that they can continue with their learning and their socio-emotional growth.
We'll start the next round of questions with Ms. Baekey. According to the RAND Corporation, 1 in 4 teachers nationwide considered leaving their job by the end of last academic year. Teachers, according to the study, were more likely to report experiencing frequent job-related stress, and symptoms of depression than the general public. Black teachers were particularly affected. Here's your question. What steps should our school district take to keep the teachers it has, especially those who are Black, Brown, or Indigenous?
So I'm so glad that you raised that question, because, you know, we're so focused here on obviously the students and all of the repercussions that have affected them as a result of the COVID pandemic. But we cannot forget our unsung heroes and administrators, the teachers, the faculty, everybody who has been working overtime, double time, in order to accommodate all of these different learning models. I was very impressed with the way that Norwalk Public Schools handled the outbreak of the pandemic. I have spoken with people in other communities, including surrounding towns of, you know, Darien, Westport, Stamford, that did not handle these situations as well as Norwalk did. That said, yes, there are definite, you know, repercussions that are affecting our teachers and our faculty. There has been a retirement rate that has led to a dearth of teachers, and so therefore we have a hiring crisis. I'm sure some of the parents on the phone here are aware of some of the, you know, classes that are being taught by temporary teachers, substitute teachers, people who are not versed in the subjects that they're teaching. I think that some of the funding that is coming into the city of Norwalk, as mentioned, almost $44 million, should be going towards supporting our teachers and our faculty and our staff. These people have gone above and beyond to accommodate all of these different learning models, from being in a classroom, teaching live to students while also teaching to them on Zoom, while trying to manage their own personal lives, a lot of them parents themselves. It's been an incredibly stressful year and a half for so many people, but in particular, our teachers and faculty. And I would really support making sure that they have all the supports that they need.
Thank you.
The next question is for Ms. McCready Brown. Let me cite a few issues: COVID, mask mandates, citizen groups that push a political agenda, time away from family and friends, and ongoing culture wars. These and other issues have led people running for elected offices to question their personal commitment to public service. So tell us, why do you want to become a member of the Board of Education?
I want to become a member of the Board of Education because number one, I'm passionate about public education. I've lived here all my life. I used to work for the Norwalk Public Schools. I served for about 9 years as the communications director. And so I have a particular perspective about how things are done. But on the subject of COVID and wearing masks, I am a big proponent of wearing masks. I think it's necessary. The district has done a wonderful job in terms of taking directions from the scientists and following the scientists. The most important thing that we need to know is that when these protocols are recommended, they benefit all of us. So if child A or parent A doesn't want to wear a mask because of a personal freedom issue, that can impact me. And so I believe that when it comes to fighting a pandemic such as COVID, we have to utilize a collective response that benefits the public good. Something like this requires all of our participation in order for all of us to be safe. But more importantly, what we have to remember is that there are some people in our community, for one reason or another, who may not have been vaccinated or they can't get vaccinated. I have a family member who is a transplant recipient, and she's barely been out of her house. And actually she's a teacher. And so when I think about people like that, when we have to think about the public good, all of us. And so I certainly have strong feeling about that. We could talk about that a lot longer, but I'm glad that the district has done such a good job with it, and hopefully we're all through with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next question is for Mr. Hosten. Give us your assessment of the restorative justice as a tool to reduce student discipline rates, especially among Black and Brown students.
Oh, excellent question. So everybody understands when we talk about restorative justice, we're talking about an approach to discipline that is not always punitive, that it does not always go straight into detentions and suspensions, but rather seeks to find ways for the student to correct their behavior and find a way to, be more productive academically and socially. I am fully in support of something like this because I think that's in too many cases, some of our disciplinary practices are counterintuitive, right? We're disciplining students to say, you should be better, but then we're undercutting their ability to be better by depriving them of their school setting and their friends and really of the path towards becoming better. I'm a teacher myself. One of the things I always tell my students is you have to give yourself room to learn. If you knew everything, then you wouldn't need to be here. So I think when we talk about restorative justice, we're talking about giving students, and particularly our Black and Brown students, as a young Black student once myself, I kind of feel this on a more personal level. Where restorative justice gives these students room to learn and grow, and it does not just take a lock them up and throw away the key kind of approach, but really says, listen, we're here to help. We're not here to punish. We're here to think about how you can be a more productive member, not just of our school community, but of the larger community. And so I think it's something that we are, we've already started. I mean, it's a really great thing we have in Norwalk already. And I think we want to continue to prioritize and focus on that for all of our students.
Thank you.
Ms. Kemeny, the next question is for you.
Mm-hmm.
Qualities and/or behavior should effective school board members exhibit?
What qualities and behaviors should we exhibit? The board members.
Yes.
Well, I think it's very important that we are professional. I think it's very important that we research whatever topics or whatever committees that we are on. I think that we definitely need to be courteous to each other, kind. That goes without saying. Everybody should be that way. We should have to attend all the meetings, of course, and being responsible. Just a good human being. I can't imagine. You have to attend the meetings. That's number one. You have to do your research if you're on a particular committee, and be knowledgeable about the topic on which you're speaking. Also, I think it's important that you go out to the public and find out and speak to the parents. You have to be open for communication. To me, the taxpayers and the parents, it's their children, and I think that they have a say in many of the things that have been going on, like the whole issue we had with the bus situation. I think that the Board of Ed should have listened to the parents. It was pretty clear that they didn't want the later start date, and I feel that the parents should have been listened to. So to me, the parents really are the determining factor, and the students, of course, and they need to have a voice in whatever the Board of Ed decides. So they need communication, number one.
Thank you.
Accountability, also I should have added a little more accountability to the taxpayers are a couple of other issues that we need to address.
Thank you.
The next question is for Ms. Mosby. Curriculum oversight is a phrase we came across a lot in researching questions for you and the other candidates. In addition, you may have seen the protest that teachers from Greenwich led last week. They were pushing back on citizen groups that were questioning what they were teaching and how they were teaching. Here's your question. What oversight role do you think parents should have in developing curricula for schools and selecting books and materials for classes?
Thank you. I believe that parents should have a big part in sitting there selecting books and curriculum for their students, their children. I believe that it should be in a process that involves all. And although we have the professionals, but a parent is someone that is with their child the half the time, and the other half the time is with the school, the teachers. And I believe a collaboration of both of them working together and listening and giving their views on certain items, because certain issues or certain things in lesson plans or something might not agree with the home lifestyle. And we need to take into accommodation all that and sit and listen. And that's the number one, is to listen. And once you listen, to weigh the simple fact that will this be able to accommodate my child as well as other kids? And then as a whole collectively, you make a decision on which curriculum. And not only should the parents, but when the students get a little older in high school, they should have a voice there as well to determine what they want to learn and move on with. So I believe it's a unity of all. I believe that we should sit together, sit down, open communication. We should listen. We should consider everything. That doesn't mean that everything is going to be one way, but the fact that if we can find a compromise going forward, that'll be great. Because when parents put their children in school, they expect to get a wonderful education for their kids. But it has to be aligned with some of their home belief as well. We cannot overlook that. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next question is for Ms. Randolph. What are the current challenges facing boards of education?
Wow. There are a lot of challenges, I feel, facing boards of education these days. We have our regular challenges of the day-to-day, or I shouldn't say we, they have the regular challenges of the day-to-day and being held accountable to the community. I think on top of that, the pandemic and quarantining and virtual learning and all of this that we've had to go through has put a lot of pressure and spotlight on the current boards of education as well. So there are many challenges that they're facing. I think now with these situations we have had, and where people are taking some of the situations that we're dealing with children and education in a political manner, I believe that that is also a big challenge, as people are often coming to meetings now and are allowed to say what they feel and have the emotions and etc. But a lot of times I think that we're heading down too much of a political rabbit hole when we're talking about our children. I think that we need to get back to the basics of all of us knowing that we're doing this for the safety and to support our children and have them fully educated as we can. And we need to help, I believe, these current boards so that we can continue to have open communication, but not make it a firing ground.
Thank you.
This question is for Ms. Sattler. Please give us your definition of student voice and how best to use it in schools and with the Board of Education.
Thank you for the question. Student voice is very important. I've been on the school governance council at the high school, and I have to say the best part of it has been the student participation. Last year, I always joked that Bismod was probably more mature than me when we were on the board. I have felt that that's the first step where students can, certainly start to get involved and work with parents and principals. It's not the only place, but on the governance council, they have a chance to help with policy, with budgets. We had a principal interview where the student participated. So that's one step. Of course, students can always attend Board of Ed meetings. They should be able to reach out to all of their Board of Ed members personally through email. We're in a world now where you can email, you can Zoom call, you can reach out to people's cell phones, you can text them. Gives students a lot more opportunity to reach out. I know in school, like at the high school, especially for student involvement, they're doing the social emotional learning time and the homeroom, where they get a chance to spend time with their homeroom teacher. And I do feel overall that the teachers are trying very hard to interact with the students as much as they can. I wish that we had more opportunity for smaller class sizes, especially in the middle school, where the students could get to know their teachers more and have more of a personal relationship with them. It would make them more confident in school. It would encourage them to offer their opinion more. For example, we were on the governance council at Rhoton Middle School. We started a student PTA for the first time, and those kids had the best ideas. Kids are always smarter than we give them credit for. And the best participation we had was our president from the student body at the middle school.
Thank you.
We'll close this round of questions with Ms. Snedaker. In a report published by the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, schools and school districts, in a rush to meet the mental health needs of students, may be tempted to unintentionally implement half measures or low quality measures that are masquerading as high quality ones. Can you give us your assessment of the district's social emotional learning plans?
Of Norwalk's or in general?
Of the districts.
Of these districts. From what I understand, there's a social emotional teacher trained in each school, is what I'm understanding that the plan is. Personally, as a social worker, and then we had to have a further certification to be a school social worker. I do believe that school social workers and guidance counselors, full-time ones that are in the schools, and that is their only position, and that's their focus as opposed to having other responsibilities. But I think it probably depends on what the budget allows, and I would always want it to be a full-time teacher along with guidance counselors, athletic trainers. I do see the need to have full-time teachers in those positions, full-time employees in those positions, but with the COVID money, don't know if it's going to, how much whether we'll have the same amount of money next year. So if you put half measures in, it's better than nothing, but I'd rather have those developed into full-time trained teachers that can stay with the school and that we don't have to pull everything out after putting it in. My father was superintendent for a number of years, 20 years ago, and every program he put in, he also had to pull out. So there is a cycle of ebb and flow, and hopefully the plans can incorporate that flow as the funding changes. And I think it's essentially important. And as a parent and as students, my family accessed those. There was a crisis counselor at McMahon when we needed one. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is our final round of questions. We'll start with Kara Baekey. Give us your reaction to this statement. Principals should have autonomy to run their own school buildings.
So while I do believe in strong leadership positions, I think that there always has to be a captain of a ship. I think that all communities, especially school communities, are inherently environments that need to be collaborative. And I think that although I'm not a principal, obviously I've never been a principal, I think it's critical that our school principals work closely with their teachers' body, as well as the administration at central office in our city. And so I don't know that I think that principals should be able to operate in complete autonomy. And so I would have to say that that's a statement that does not resonate with me, because I am a big believer in teamwork and collaboration, and I think that there are many inputs into any community in order to make it successful. So that's my perspective on that statement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question is for Sheri, Ms. McCready-Brown. What in your background leads you to believe that you would be an effective school board member?
Thank you for that question. So I can give you a couple of reasons. One, like I indicated earlier, I'm a lifelong resident of Norwalk. I attended schools here as well, and my daughter did as well. Number two, I served as an employee. I worked for the school district for 9 years, and I worked directly with the superintendent. So I have a really good understanding of curriculum, how the organization is managed, and a good understanding of funding. Number three, I currently sit on the Board of Estimate and Taxation, which is the city's tax board. And so we review and examine and recommend budgets to the city. I'd also like to say that public service is a passion of mine. I think I indicated in my opening that my dad served in a multitude of roles here in the city, appointed and elected. And so I've always had an interest in public service. I think Norwalk is a fabulous city. The best is yet to come. We have a #1 city school district. I'd like to see it get even better. I want to make sure that we have funding in place for students and administrators to make sure that they can continue to get the job done. And I'm really excited about the fact that you students are doing this. I am so happy, and I'm hoping that you all are going to come out and vote and remain vigilant in your work, in your volunteer work, being involved. We need your digital savvy, we need your energy, we need your intellect, and we need your curiosity to bring us over to the next level.
Thank you.
The next question is for Colin Hosten. Do you support opening public school classrooms to people from other careers and giving them a fast-track route to becoming qualified teachers? Please explain your answer.
I do support that. I think that we are looking for highly qualified, certified teaching faculty in our classrooms, and if we can get to those people in a way that cuts through a little bit of the red tape for them to get there, then I think it only serves our schools and our students. I think that when we talk about learning and teaching, we're talking about academics and test taking. We're also teaching young people in some ways how to live, how to be people, how to be adults. And I think that yes, there's a path to doing that by going through the traditional academic path, getting certified in teaching. But I think that there are other paths, other things that people in other career tracks may have to offer. We have a great example from our recently deceased board member, Mike Barbas, who spent a career doing a multitude of things and then went back to get certified. And I think that's, was a great example to, anyone out there who's thinking, well, maybe this might be something for me. We talked earlier about the fact that Norwalk, and I think every single school district right now, is competing to get more qualified teachers in our classrooms. It's a tough time, right? It's a tough time for all of us. So, we're not pointing fingers, but absolutely, if we can find a way to make it easier for highly qualified professionals to come into the classrooms and teach our kids, I would be all for that.
Thank you.
This question is for Alexandra Kemeny. What is your personal experience with public education? How will your experience influence your work as a board member?
How's that? Good? You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Well, I've been a teacher for 31 years. So I see the ins and outs of the schools. I see how the makeup of classes. I'm on an elementary level. I know a lot about. I also work at Crystal Theater, so I still work with children all the time. I see the diversity in the needs of our children. So that means that's one of the problems. Diversity is a good thing. It's a good thing in a community, but diversity can create issues of inequity. And equity in education means that all students have to be provided with what they need. So I think that teachers need to be brought to the table. I don't think they have a voice in addition to the students, but I think teachers themselves really care about the students. They know the students individually, and I feel that they aren't listened to. I know often there has been look at curriculum, and they've had classes or forums where the teachers would come in, decide which books to buy, for example, and then they would look through them, and then they would decide on a book, and then they didn't get that book because maybe one book was cheaper or less expensive. So they really don't feel like they are listened to. So they're a big part of the puzzle. I also think all the students have a lot of different needs that we need to address. And I think that I in my follow-up statement and my closing statement, I will address a lot of those ways to address the inequities and helping students become individuals. And that's what we need to look at.
Thank you.
This question is for Shirley Mosby. What is your view of the role of charter schools in public education? What is your position on charter schools in our district?
Hi, I'm for whatever is best to educate all of our children. I believe first of all that a strong public school is great if we can have that. But if there's an opportunity for our children to get education somewhere else, then if it's something that fits within that family, then they should consider something like that. I still will go back to making sure that the public schools is our number one choice. But if you cannot succeed in public schools, then you need to sit and start thinking about another situation, another school. And that's where it comes with choice. Although we claim that we're going to have school choice in our school, then we need to have school choice at home as well. If you feel charter schools are the best way to go, then you go charter school. If you feel public schools are the best way to go, if you feel private, that's a personal choice with a family who's trying to make sure that their kids get the best education possible. And that is going through the process and seeing. My number one choice would be a public school if we have all the things put in place that we need to have to make sure that we have accountability open communication, inclusivity, all that stuff, and make sure that our academics are strong for our children. That's where I will go first. But then if something else comes along and you feel that it's best for you, your family, then you should sit down and have a serious, discussion with your family and decide that this is the best way to go for you. That's where I'm at. But again, public school would be my number one choice if we get the public school back up to, well, it's there, but if we continue to improve it, to get it to a level to where everyone feels included and everyone is at the table. Okay.
Thank you.
Our next question is for Janine Randolph. What educational innovations from other school districts would you like to bring into Norwalk?
Thank you for that question. Very good question. I would like us to, I see some of the schools from some of my friends that live in some other districts. I think some of the things that they do as far as bringing in a certain type of main speaker to focus on a program that they're going to have throughout the year. So for an example, if we wanted to focus on, the social and emotional learning, which we all do, we would have someone come in on a regular basis, talking to us and helping through with talking with the parents, talking with the students, talking with the teachers. I'd like to see some more things like that coming through our school system, where we're really involving all the stakeholders, as we say, to communicate with us and let us know the better things that we need to do. With our school district alone, I think that we are really on a great track and that we're doing great things here. We're bringing across innovations ourselves, I believe. I think we had a great workshop with Dr. Fergus from Temple University recently when he was talking about diversity and equity and inclusion. I think we continue to talk about things like this in our community here in Norwalk. I think we're always trying to better ourselves and use any innovations that we can from other communities, but I think we're doing a pretty good job here ourselves, and we are really taking a step in the right direction.
Thank you.
This question is for Jody Sattler. According to the Center for School Change in Minnesota, many board members start off by seeing themselves as community representatives. Over time, though, they come under pressure to be spokespeople and advocates for the school district. Here's your question. Do you see yourself primarily as a representative of the community or as a representative of the school system?
Thank you for that question. It's actually very interesting, especially since I haven't been on the board yet, but I think any of us that send our children to a public school should be an advocate for it. If you're not an advocate for the schools that you're sending your children to, then I'm not sure why you're doing that. There's always ways that we can make improvements. There's certainly things that I want to do differently and help with the students, which is why I'm running for the Board of Ed, which is why I become involved, and I have been involved from day one. But you are put in a very interesting situation where you have to take information from the students and the parents and the teachers and help advocate for them. But you don't want to be part of a board or a school district that you can't be proud of. So it would be very important to advocate for your school district in a positive way, in terms of here's where we've been and here's where we're going. Here's the improvements that we've made. It's okay to talk about issues that you have as long as you have a plan in place and what are the steps you're going to take to fix it. We should all be proud that we send our kids to Norwalk Public Schools. It shouldn't just be the Board of Ed members, it should be the students, and it should be the parents and the teaching staff that work there. So so I'm just going to read back one more time, make sure I'm answering this correctly. So yes, I would see myself as a representative of the community and of the school system, both. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will close this round of questions with Katherine Snedaker. Please tell us your views on homework as an equity issue.
question. My view as homework as an equity issue. I think that I actually haven't thought about this, so I'm just going to go with it. Some kids will come home with homework and have a environment where they have a parent or a guardian to help them, or an older sibling. Other students may have to go to work or go to a form of care where they don't have that ability to work. I think also there's inequity in who has Wi-Fi, who doesn't have Wi-Fi. So I think there's parental or guidance support. I think there's also inequities in Wi-Fi and technology, and also responsibilities for each student on what is required of them. I know with 3 sons that had learning disabilities, homework was for me in the evenings a full-time job. Although with math, I was told to stay away from the math. I was told my kids would be better if I didn't get anywhere near their math because I didn't understand how math was being taught right now. However, I do think that that's a struggle, and I think that over time they have reduced the amount of homework that students are getting. But I do think that that should be examined. And what is the homework for? Is the homework actually helping in an area that you need, or is it just mattering to check a box at the end of the day? I'm also really interested in learning more on that topic, so I'm going to go Google it after. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to the candidates. Before we move to closing statements, we'd like you to answer one final question. We have scrambled the order in which you will respond, and you have 1 minute to answer. Here is the question. What author, book, journal article, or seminar has most influenced your thinking on educational policy, and why? Let me repeat it. What author, book, journal, article, or seminar has most influenced your thinking on educational policy, and why? You have 1 minute to answer. We'll start with Colin Hosten.
Me? Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go to a book that I found inspiring when I was really becoming into myself as a young teenager. It's a book called Miguel Street by an author named Vidya Naipaul. And the reason I bring that up, it's not a book about pedagogy. It's not a book specifically about education, but it's a book that engaged me at the time as a fairly distractible kid in reading. And the main reason, it's a well-written book, it's a Nobel laureate, but I think the main reason it got me engaged in reading is that I saw characters in that book who looked like me, who sounded like me, who had my background and experience for the first time. And that was like, I was 13, I was reading the classics up until then. So in terms of what it teaches is that that children need to see themselves reflected in their educational experience. So that's what I'll go with.
Thank you. Next to answer is Miss Mosby.
Good, got it on mute, sorry. Hi, I recently, I can't think of the name of the segment that I saw, but I was fascinated with the fact that it educated me a lot on what's been happening with the students with the social emotional learning, and how this pandemic has been affecting the students in school. And it went into clinical therapists. That would be, something that we can bring in, and how the anxiety and depression was really have taken a toll. And that although they're back in school, some of the students there, they still need to go through an adjustment. And then it was about the social media platform of how children are being targeted. And I thought that was quite fascinating. And I was hoping that probably maybe the school board can implement something like a therapist, and therapists that look more like them would be extremely helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Kemeny.
Okay. The book is something about charter schools versus public school. And I'm just reading, I'm probably 3/4 of the way through. And it was interesting because they talk about New York public schools, and they talk a lot about school choice, where I believe, and it would be wonderful if we could have school choice within public schools, because like I did teach at Columbus for a few years during when I was teaching at Rowayton, and there's a different mentality there because they choose to go to that school, and the parents are really advocates for their children. So this explained about they had charter schools that were in the same building as public schools. That's what this book was about. And now the charter schools did so much better in their scores, but they're in the same building and the environment was the same. So that's what I'm reading, and I'm looking at the pros and cons of both of the issues.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Snedaker.
Hi, so the book that I was just actually looking for the name of the book. In 1967, in November of 1967, I was 1 year old, and there was what's called a student riot in Philadelphia. I was reading about the book because my dad was actually there as an administrator. Students marched, students came peacefully to the Board of Ed to talk about in 1967 wanting to wear natural hair, wanting to wear the clothing that they chose, and to have more Black teachers to teach them and an African-centric curriculum. And police showed up and basically beat the students. And I was reading that story in the book, reading that my dad was grabbed by the police commissioner. And then I looked at the New York Times article, and all it said was riotous students, were controlled by the police. So really seeing the systemic racism that existed.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Sattler.
Hi, when I was on the Academically Talented Redesign Committee, we met with Dr. Renzulli and Dr. Sally Rice, and went to a seminar up in Hartford to learn about the school enrichment model that is being encouraged at our schools right now. I found it very interesting, especially based on my work that I'd done with the enrichment program that I ran at Rowayton Elementary School. And it just shows that kids really need a chance to explore. If we had implemented the school enrichment model properly, they would be starting at an earlier age than we are. But it allows students to have an opportunity to figure out what they don't like, what they like, in an environment that is collaborative. And to me, why it's so important is because I have been such an advocate for after school activities, more chances for kids to spend time at school through theater, sports. I wish we had the middle school sports back. And so this book showed that the enrichment is just as important as the academics.
Thank you. Next is Ms. McCready Brown.
So I read a book by Malcolm Gladwell. It's called Outliers. I don't know if it's considered an academic book, but it speaks to what makes people high achievers. And the book talks about the nexus between practice, perfecting your craft, along with preparation, timing, and some good luck. It talks about why some kids, for instance, are good at math. Some people tend to think it may have something to do with how the child is raised, but this book examines other issues that may come into play as to why a particular student or students may excel in math.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Baekey.
So I love this question, and I'm thinking about the experiences that I've had as an activist in the gun violence prevention movement. And as an activist, I've gone through a lot of different types of trainings, in particular trainings around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one of the things that I've learned a lot about is implicit bias. And it's a really interesting topic. I think it's a topic that makes a lot of people very uncomfortable. But I think it's critical that we all become aware of the potential that we all have implicit bias. And I think going from there, probably the most impactful seminar that I've been able to be a part of was the one most recently with Dr. Fergus, Equity and Literacy at Marvin School. And thereof, you know, I think that equity in education is obviously critical, and that's been very impactful on my policy thoughts.
Thank you. And finally, Ms. Randolph.
I didn't even realize that I was the last one. I have to say, as I mentioned before, and as Kara just mentioned, the workshop that Dr. Fergus from Temple University had just a couple of weeks ago about diversity, equity, inclusion, and equity workshop was so informative and so interesting to me, and really got my thoughts going even more so. We had people from the audience who spoke, as Colin did, as you know, some things didn't really click for them as far as reading until they had a teacher who looked like them. You know, and we really need to work on this as a community, because reading is basically the foundation to liberation, and we really need to make sure that we're educating all our children.
Thank you.
Next, we'd like to give all of you a closing statement. Remember, you have 2 minutes. We'll return to alphabetical order, so we'll start with Ms. Baekey.
Thank you. As a candidate for the Board of Education, similarly to my fellow candidates, I care deeply about closing the achievement gap that has resulted out of the COVID-19 pandemic. The disruptions in students' learning, as well as the social and emotional setbacks that so many have experienced, are all too real, as I've seen firsthand with my own 2 teenagers. This said, I feel that the one issue that sets me apart is my passion around safety and security on our school campuses. As noted, in the wake of the shooting at Sandy Hook, I was moved to action. With 2 kids at Merrimack Elementary, I was scared for their safety, for all of our children's safety. As the leader of the Connecticut chapter of Moms Demand Action, I garner deep experience and knowledge of gun violence prevention. I have training around and access to further information on programs that have proven to reduce threats and incidents of violence at schools across the country. These are the kinds of things that I would like to bring to our community. If elected to the Board of Education, I would like to install a safety committee. This would allow for our board to have visibility into the safety standards and protocols that are currently in place, and to be able to provide collaborative feedback in an effort to keep all of our children as safe as possible while on our campuses and off.
Thank you.
As a parent of a child in the Norwalk Public Schools and as a city resident that wants the very best opportunities for all of our children, I believe that we as a school district are on an upward trajectory. In my opinion, the ways in which our school district and Board of Ed have responded to the challenges related to the pandemic are admirable. From the regular, concise, outgoing communications to the systematic distribution of Chromebooks and assurances of Wi-Fi to the daily meals, Norwalk excelled. This is what a strong school community looks like, and when coupled with the strengths and innovative ideas that our superintendent brings to Norwalk, I see an incredible opportunity for our city to finally break through and take our school system and its students to levels not seen before. Thank you.
Thank you. The next statement is from Ms. McCready Brown.
Thank you again, Norwalk Acts and the Center for Youth Leadership. Norwalk is an amazing city, and I was born and raised here in Norwalk. I'm a product of the city's outstanding public school system and a graduate of Brian McMahon High School. One of the things that I'd like to see us be more deliberate about is to make sure that we recruit and retain more teachers of color. I think that it's important that our staff be reflective of the student population. Studies show that all students do better when they have teachers from different backgrounds in the classroom. And there are many benefits to learning in a diverse environment, including meeting and interacting with people from different cultures. Diversity reflects the workplace. Diversity creates cultural awareness and understanding. Students gain global perspectives and practices. And diversity demonstrates that we all belong to something. Now, given that equity is identified as one of the goals noted in the Norwalk Public Schools strategic priorities, I believe that they are working on a plan to address this issue. Last September, the district did spearhead a marketing campaign to target teachers of color. I believe in the values, the community, ideals, and concerns that all help make Norwalk a successful model of an urban-suburban community with innovative goals that create a vibrant, academically progressive, and diverse school district. If I'm elected to the board, I will work diligently utilizing the sum of my experiences to help inform my judgment while making thoughtful contributions as a steward of this distinguished board. Thank you.
Thank you. The next statement is from Mr. Hosten.
Thank you. And I want to thank everyone at the Center for Youth Leadership and Norwalk Acts for hosting a really well-run forum tonight. It has been a very humbling honor, also very challenging, but also very rewarding to serve on the board for the past 2 years and as chair for this past year. It's been a tough time, okay? Our students know that better than anybody else, but the students are the people who keep me inspired to keep going. They're the, somebody asked earlier why you're running. People always ask me, why are you running? You don't have any kids. And I say, I like to think I have about 12,000 children in this system, and you are the reason that I'm running. You've been through a lot, and we still have a lot more work to do. I see my role on the board as to ensure that every child's learning needs are met, whether it's academically, socially, emotionally, and otherwise. I want you to feel safe and supported so that you can learn. I want you to know that despite this repetition of the phrase learning loss, we are incredibly proud of our students here in Norwalk. We have some of the best in the country. We also have some opportunity and achievement gaps that we want to address by making sure that we are meeting students where they are to help them learn as best as possible. I think we have some great momentum here in Norwalk, and I hope we can keep it going. This is a political process, but none of us is here to play politics with our students. So again, for me, it has been an honor and my privilege to serve. It is a public service role that I cherish greatly. And I hope very much that I can continue serving for another term. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next statement is from Ms. Kemeny.
I'd like to address my closing statement directly to the high school students. A Norwalk Board of Ed's responsibility is to give opportunities for all students to prepare for life after graduation and to give them the tools to succeed. This means, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, or intellectual prowess, all our students need to read, write, speak English, and balance a checkbook. This is not an easy task because of the diversity of the educational needs of our students. These needs should be met in the years before high school. And then these on entering high school, student strengths or interests will lead them toward the path of their future. Opportunities need to be made available for students, whether it leads to college, the military, or an apprenticeship with a local business. There should be experiential opportunities to foster students to become productive members of our community. As a board, we should, 1, create classes that support vocations like math for carpenters, or medical care classes for nurses' aides, or preschool internship for daycare with classes on developmental growth, or elder care internships. 2, we should develop partnerships with local businesses that allow students to shadow them during a typical day, giving opportunities to students to explore various trades or professions as plumbing, electrical work, oyster fishing, welding, the list can go on, or shadowing a teacher or a paralegal on one of their typical days. Hiring career vocational counselors, which are different than social workers. That's what we need to do, have a select group that they team up with in 9th grade, following them through graduation. These career counselors would facilitate field experience, advising and offering vocational opportunities for all students to experience.
Thank you. Ms. Mosby will give the next statement.
I would like to thank the Center of Youth Leadership, Norwalk Acts, and the community members who are here tonight participating in this forum, as well as my fellow candidates. I've always had a vested interest in our schools, and I am passionate about serving the Norwalk community and its students. I'm a strong advocate for open communication, transparency, and accountability to taxpayers. My diverse family and background give me a unique insight into the needs of our children. I know the importance of parental involvement and community engagement for our students to succeed. I would strongly support collaboration among the key stakeholders, staff, teachers, administration, parents, students, and the community, and will continue to work to bring groups together to achieve the ultimate goal that every child receives a good quality education. I welcome and encourage that all should be involved in decision-making, especially the young adults, issues that concern them, such as social emotional learning, mental health, LGBTQ, diversity, equity, and many more issues facing our students. As a proven community leader and strong advocate for all children, I've always encouraged parents to take an active role in their students' education. I believe everyone should have a voice, and that voice should be heard. I will support the activities and curricula that are in the best interest of Norwalk students. I will be someone you can count on to value your children, your opinions, and who will always listen to you. I will always have an open door policy and will be accessible to all. In conclusion, I am honored to be on the board and look forward to supporting your children. I ask for your support and vote on November 2nd and serve our students and community. Thank you.
Thank you. The next statement will be from Ms. Randolph.
Thank you. Thank you for Norwalk Acts and the Center for Youth Leadership at Brian McMahon High for hosting this forum tonight. I'm seeking support for an at-large seat on the Board of Education. Stating the obvious, this past year and a half has been a challenge for us all. I was able to see the effects of virtual learning up close and how it affects children differently in my own house. I respect all who had to make such decisions in schooling in these past years. This is one of the reasons why I see the role of board member as a crucial form of service. I advocate for all the children of Norwalk. I've been a member of the Connecticut PTA, the co-fundraising chair and co-president in Narragansett Elementary PTA, and now president of the Nathan Hale PTA. My focus has always been on bettering the schools for students as well as the teachers and administration. My goals are to continue to work towards an equitable education system throughout our school system and to support the entire learning community, including teachers and parents. We need the systems in place that ensure not only that the entire learning community is heard, but then there is follow through on decisions and actions from the administration. I am positioned to help improve communication between the board and the wider learning community because I know how important it is for families to feel more informed on issues and decisions. This is why we need a more equitable and transparent funding process. It is also crucial to have an opening and working relationship with the Common Council so we have civil discourse and stick to the task on hand. We don't want to politicize while we plan for our children's future. I have been and will continue to be a big supporter of our public schools in Norwalk. Being a mother, as most of the mothers in the audience will know, has given me the mama bear strength to not only fight for what I believe my child and every child deserves, but to become a confident and outspoken leader in the school community. I hope to continue to not only support, but to show my girls and other girls and women of color that we participate, we get involved, we don't sit back and listen to others make decisions for us. Thank you.
Thank you. The next statement is from Ms. Sattler.
Thank you for the great questions tonight, and I applaud the research and organization that was put into this event. Earlier in the night that I said that I found that the kids can be more mature than the adults, and this is another great example of the dedication of our students. I'm a committed and dedicated parent and community leader who is ready to be a member of the Norwalk Board of Education. Our students just went through a very difficult time and we need to get them back on track. That happens by providing a safe space where all students feel confident in their learning and academic goals. We need to focus on our decline in reading and math proficiencies by creating appropriate class sizes so teachers can build a strong relationship with students and understand their specific needs. I've already proven myself to be an effective leader in my community and for Norwalk schools, and I am now ready and excited to take the next step to help lead the future of public education in Norwalk. Our Board of Ed needs to require more accountability and transparency on the decisions that affect our students, and our board should be asking more strategic questions to our school leadership. We need to provide more opportunities for students to spend time at school through more investment in our after-school activities, including transportation for a late bus and middle school sports. We need to assess our middle school structure and what we can do to improve our students for high school readiness. Smaller class sizes, increased social workers, and more targeted learning is necessary to help our students become successful. It will also help build confidence in students at this very stressful age. I currently have 3 children at Brian McMahon High School, so I know the daily issues that our students are facing. Our high school students need help with college readiness through dedicated college guidance counselors that help students navigate this very complicated process. We also need to have career counselors so students have other postgraduate options such as technical school or resume help for unemployment. Right now, our guidance counselors have too many varied duties which do not allow for students to receive the attention they need for college choices in the application process. Happy, strong, motivated, creative thinking students deserve all the tools available and necessary to help them thrive and succeed in school and their families and their community. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the last statement is from Ms. Snedaker.
I want to thank Norwalk Acts and the Center for Youth Leadership. I'm incredibly impressed with the research, the question, and the timing. If I do this right on time, we shall end on time. This is an amazing booklet. This is an amazing set of programs. I want to make sure, as one of the 9 people that sit together, and when we sit together, we are a board together, that we support our superintendent, that these things can happen. And if we create a situation where our superintendent leaves in 2 years, again, everything has to redo. It is so crucial that we make sure we support our superintendent. And I don't think we've spoken enough about that support. It's a really hard job. And I grew up with the phone ringing and people screaming at my dad for not calling the snow day, for calling the snow day. And that's when people used to call your house. With social media, I think the pressure on superintendents are even greater. It is crucial that we support our superintendent, and we support a superintendent that's going to move to Norwalk, live in Norwalk, interact with Norwalk students. And so, like, my father can refer to, you know, how's Bobby Duff doing, because he gave Bob Duff his diploma. I would really like to have our superintendent, you know, be here in 5 to 10 years. And along with that, our superintendent needs that time to have leadership at the state level, to go to Hartford, because we have to fund this. We have to make sure the money is here today, the money is here next year and the year after. This is great, but we need to stick with this, not just for a couple years. What if we had the funding that we would never have to cut one of these programs, and we could only add to full-time guidance counselors, full-time athletic trainers, all the things our teachers deserve. And I'm so impressed with all the youth here, and it just shows how Norwalk Schools is amazing. Thank you for this night.
Thank you.
For tonight's presentation, we want to thank the candidates from Norwalk's Board of Education for joining us. We wish you the best of luck on Election Day. We have a big thanks to the staff of Norwalk Acts for the technical support, and thanks to those who tuned in to listen. Make sure you join us on November 17th for our next town hall presentation, and remember to vote next week. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Jen, you want to stop the recording?
If I can, this is the 3rd time I'm losing control of any Zoom functions. So